All right, folks, thanks for being here. We're going to open up this press conference over here to the right. Adam King, WBNS.
Coach, what were your initial reactions seeing where you guys were playing, and what was your message to the team immediately after?
I think when you looked at it last week, you could kind of sort of project out where you might be. This was one of the projections that we saw. So, we've been looking at these guys and, a couple other opponents, but, we're fired up. We're obviously excited about playing the first ever playoff game in Ohio Stadium. Ohio Stadium's been around a long time, over 100 years. There's been a lot of great games, but never a playoff game like this. And so, night game, 8 o'clock, it's going to be electric. Our guys are going to be excited about this. And so, as we head into our preparation, it's going to be on us fast, 2 weeks. And so, getting this first win will be critical in building momentum as you head into the teeth of the playoffs. And when you look at tournament play, you look at playoff plays, we all know that first game is very, very important. So it's not bowl prep. It's very different. It's a quick turnaround, and all of our focus is on these guys.
I know you're focused on Tennessee, but do you look at the whole landscape here, and how do you feel with your guys' draw?
Well, I think when you look at a bunch of the teams that are in there, our guys have played some of these teams, and whether it was this year, in the past, whatever it might be. So there's guys who have a lot of confidence looking at the draw, saying, we know who these teams are. They're very good. But we also feel confident, in who we are, where we are, when we're playing our best. Now, we also have to make adjustments and make corrections and fix the things that need to get fixed coming off the last game. That has to happen. But almost every team in this playoff has their own issues. They have their own things that they need to address. So to me, that's going to be a huge part of who has success here.
Kellyanne Stitz, WSYX.
Coach Jay, how have you seen your leadership group start to respond and regroup now, focus on the playoff?
I think last week it was a mixed bag of identifying the things that didn't go well, working through that. You don't just move on after a day or two. We know that. But now that we have a target, we said, listen, we're going to flush that out. We got back on the field. We got into the weekend and said, okay, we got to learn from it. We got to fix the problems. But there's not going to do us any good looking back on that. We got to learn from it, move on. The guys, have a good look in their eye. We were up there at noon watching the selection show. There was a great energy up there. They want to play. They want to get back on the field and get a win.
Dylan Davis, Delaware Gazette.
Brian, earlier this week you alluded to the fact that there might be some changes you'll look at along the offensive line. Do you feel like you have a good grasp of who you want to start on that offensive line moving into this game?
I mean, I know who's going to be in the mix. I'm not going to get into that just yet. We have 2 weeks of prep that we got to dive into and identify what gives us the best chance next week or in 2 weeks to go win this thing. And so, we'll look at it and make sure it's right. But, yeah, I mean, there'll be some guys in the mix. Luke Montgomery will be in the mix. Josh Padilla will be in the mix. And we'll make sure that it's right. And, based on how they practice, we'll figure out how it's going to look.
Maybe Zin's health, is he potentially in that mix there, or is he done?
Right now, he's not available. Yeah.
Bill Landis, Kings of the North.
Brian, you had some guys announce that they're entering the transfer portal, specifically Gabe Powers, who starts on a couple of special teams units for you guys. Is there any chance that guys who announce they're entering the portal still might play for you in the postseason? And if not, how do you go about replacing a guy like Gabe specifically who does play for you?
Yeah, as I'm sure you can imagine, it's a very unique situation. And so we're gonna deal with each of those situations on an individual basis because, listen, there's guys who, they want to first off finish what they started here. These guys made a commitment to this team. It's a close team. They want to finish out their commitment. And I think that those guys deserve a lot of credit for wanting to do that. But I also think that, some guys need to figure out, okay, what's next for me? And because of, it's not their fault, it's just the way it's designed, that they have to make decisions while we're getting ready to go play in the playoffs. So very, very unique. To answer your question, we'll make decisions on an individual basis. But, we have to make sure that, we're being fair to our guys, but we're also, have enough depth that we need to go make this run.
Have any of those decisions been made yet? Specifically, will Gabe be with you guys for the postseason?
Right. So we're gonna, the portal officially opens tomorrow, or I guess maybe late tonight. So we'll continue to have these conversations into this week and make some final decisions as we get through probably midweek.
Cameron T. Robinson, The Athletic.
Brian, the O-line, obviously Tennessee's defensive line, as you've probably seen, very, very good.
Yes.
What have you seen from this offensive line really struggled those last 2 weeks that gives you some confidence, and even the guys who are on the bench, that you right the wrongs of that and get prepared for a full line?
Well, I look at some of what's across. In being away from it for a week, you get to go out and look at some of the other offensive lines that are across the country, and certainly taking a couple of these injuries, key injuries, did set us back. But these guys have what it takes to go make this run, and so we got to help them. We got to help them. And I think there's ways to do that. Now, we haven't done a whole bunch of practicing. We've been on the field twice, and we'll get back out there tomorrow, and obviously a big week of practice this week. So, we got to go put it on the field. But there's a lot of ways that we can do it, and we will do it.
How do you go into the playoff from a coaching game planning standpoint of, yes, we did this wrong against Michigan State, but not, like, you know what I mean, like staying somewhere in that middle and not defaulting to the opposite.
Right. No, yeah, exactly. Not being extreme. Yeah, you're exactly right. I think that's important. You have to identify what you think. It's similar to, kind of what happened in the Oregon game on defense. I think when you saw some of the adjustments that were made, to the naked eye, it's like, okay, what really was different? But there was a difference. Well, it's got to be the way it here is, up front, and how we're running the ball, and how we're operating, and some of it's execution, some of it is making sure we put the guys in the right position to be successful.
Tony Girdman, Buckeye Huddle.
Right, head coaches always have their folder of how bowl prep is, playoff prep is. What do you turn to now, because this is completely different?
Yeah, it is very different. We took last week to rest up a little bit. We were on the field twice, and then we have a plan for this week and how we're going to attack this week, and then next week will be game week. So it's different than anything in the past. We'll finish up finals here this week, which is good. Give our guys more time. But this week is really, we got to get the game plan in, we got to get it going, and then next week we're right into game plan week. So it's really, the only difference is really this week right here, and I think we got a really good plan for it. I've talked to Jim, I've talked to Chip, and we'll keep evaluating it as we move forward.
Have you talked to Jim Dressel about the FCS playoffs at all, and how things like that? Like, have you reached out to anybody like that?
Yeah, a little bit. Had some conversations with different folks about that. But you also know your team, and I think sometimes when you get too much information, it can cloud your judgment. And I've learned that before. I think we know this team. I know this team. I think we got a good plan for it, and we're going to go attack it.
Stefan Kreisnick, Cleveland.com.
How have you seen Will kind of respond from, the game against Michigan? And obviously, anytime you lose a game, the backlash that comes with that. How has he kind of responded this last week or so?
Similar to the other guys. Again, when you first come off of those types of things, there's a lot of emotion. And then as time goes on, you got to get refocused because that, what you've done in the past really does not affect what's going on moving forward. Everything is out in front of us. And I think he's in the same boat just like that. And, he knows what needs to get done. We got to have great couple weeks of preparation and then go put it on the field. And he's the same way. And, I know he's excited to get back on the field this week.
Dave Holmes, WSYX.
Ryan, I think when this whole thing was announced, this was the type of matchup people were intrigued about. A Southern team coming up here in December, unheard of. I know Tennessee's not, the Dominican or anything like that, but I mean, as far as what are your thoughts on these unique matchups that we're finally getting to see for the first time?
That's a once in a lifetime opportunity up until this point. I mean, this has never happened before. So I think it's exciting. I think it's exciting for our players. I think it's exciting for our coaches and staff. It's exciting for our fans to be part of something. And, that's never really been done before. And so also having a night game, in the Horseshoe, and who knows what the weather will be. It'll be great. It'll be electric. And so, and we're all excited about it. It's the first time for this. And, it's just very different than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. We're just in a different time. And so, we got to go. And, we'll practice outside like we continue to do to make sure that, we're ready for the elements because, that this time of year, that becomes a big part of it.
Jeremy Birmingham, the podcast.
Ryan, from a 10,000-foot view, how do you and the administration at Ohio State feel about the selection process? When you look at the seeding, there are teams ahead of you that maybe the best part of their resume is who they lost to, as opposed to who they beat. Nick Saban was very vocal today, talking about strength of schedule having to be important. Where do you think the priorities need to be in the future of this 12-team playoff and shifting the importance of trying to determine resumes?
Well, I think the first thing is, it's our responsibility to win the conference, and when you win the conference, you're in. You know what I'm saying? I've always felt that way, and so when you don't do that, like, you put yourself at risk. And I think there's a lot of opinions that get thrown back and forth. I don't think where I'm at right now, it's worth me getting into all that. We are where we are. I think we got a great opponent here. And but I do think as we move forward, like you said, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, and it's not apples to apples. So every year I think hopefully we get more and more down the road of what it's supposed to look like, what equity is. But I think when you think about where it was, even last year where there's 4 teams, now you're talking about 12. So the conversation about, does 10, 11, or 12 get in as opposed to, 5, 6, 4, I think that's better. And no matter how many teams we have come in, there's always going to be some of that conversation because it's not all the same because the conferences are different. Some teams play 9 conference games, some teams play 8 conference games. Are you focusing on the losses or are you focusing on the wins? I think there's a lot to be said for that. And, I do think, the quality of wins, certainly, in my opinion, probably matter the most, but, there's a lot of different ways to look at it.
Deep left, Nicole Holman, WBNS 10 TV.
Coach, in terms of, people all over the country are crunching the numbers of what the matchups could be the national title, kind of looking further, but how have your leaders and how have you looked at it as in, hey, we have Tennessee first, we don't need to worry about who it could be down the road?
Oh, geez, yeah, no, we're not there at all. No, we got to win this first game. Yeah, we got to win this first game. We got to, and then build from there. There's no question. I don't think there's one person in this building that's looking way down the road, other than the fact that when they look at, who we may play down the road, we've played some of these guys already. So I think there's a bunch of confidence in the fact that, okay, we know what these guys are like. We played them, and we feel good about rematches down the road or playing them this season. That being said, though, you got to win this game. And, I've already talked to our guys about that last week. When you're in this style of play, you got to get that first win. You got to get got to get started and build some momentum into the playoffs. So, that'll be our focus in making sure we win this game.
Pat Murphy, 24/7 Sports.
Ryan, you obviously have a background in the NFL. Chip, some other guys on your staff. How much do you lean on that as opposed to talking to other people having gone through some of this similar playoff situation?
Yeah, I think there are some similarities now. Yeah, there are. And I think a big part of that is knowing you have to play your best football at the end of the season. And once you get to this point, what's happened previous to right now doesn't really have anything to do with where we are. Our draw's our draw. The teams we're going to play are the teams we're going to play. Tennessee is coming to our place to play at home. And it's when you think about some of those wild card teams who play and they win that first game and they build some momentum because they are playing in the first round, that's the idea here. In terms of schematics and those types of things, there's different ways to look at that when you're especially playing a rematch. When you're playing in division games, you're playing those teams twice. You could play them a third time, and that plays in. We're not really into that situation right now. But we also wanted to be healthy this time of year. And certainly, we have taken a few injuries up front. But, for the most part, we've been pretty healthy here. And so, here we are now. Everybody's journey is different to get to this point right now. We're here, and now we got to go play. And, there's been twists and turns and ups and downs, but here we are. And so, I think when you think about the opportunity that our team has to go do something like this, this would be an unbelievable accomplishment to go on a run here and go win the whole thing. You're 4 games away. It's real. It's on the table. As much as the last week hurt, it hurt. But here we are now. And so all the focus has got to go on Tennessee and winning this first one.
Dan Hope, 11 Warriors.
Ryan, you had said after the Oregon game you spent more time with the defense, kind of working with them. Have you spent more time with the offense here in this last week after the Michigan game, and do you change anything about the operation based on how that game went?
Definitely been spending some time with the offense, and we'll look at it and see whatever makes the most sense to win this game. We'll do whatever it takes. And we've already been looking at Tennessee, as you can imagine. We didn't, we've been looking at them, and so now we know for sure. So all the stuff's been done ahead of time. Guys have got a head start on this thing, so we'll dive into it tonight hard, into tomorrow, and then have a really clean game plan probably by Tuesday. With third down, red zone, goal line, all those things tied in, so that we got about 10 days to work it, flush through all the issues, and so I think that's the good part of this thing. It's not too far where you got a month where you're kind of in bowl prep, but it's also not a week where it's on. You get kind of 2 weeks to work on this thing and work through the issues and try to put our guys in the best position to be successful. So yeah, I'll make sure I'm a big part of it, and whatever it takes to get done, we're gonna get it done.
What stands out defense on first impression?
Their front is very good. On the edge, inside, both corners are tremendous. They do a nice job. They've stopped the run very well this season, and lead a lot of statistics defensively, certainly in the SEC. And so it's going to be a great challenge for our guys. We've played against good defenses this year, but this will be one of them.
Spencer Holbrook, Letterman.
And a couple years ago, it seemed like you guys got a shot in the arm when you found out that you were in. You were playing the #1 team in the country. I know that this isn't the same thing. You already knew that you were in, but just knowing your opponent, do you think that's like the next step in getting over what happened and how you guys actually have like a real set target to set your eyes on?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you have a target and you got a mission, that's where your focus goes. Until then, you're a little bit in limbo. It's coming, but you don't know. We kind of felt like this may shake out like this, and so we've had an idea, but now we're in it. So now you know exactly what it is. Now you're really diving into it, and I'm telling you right now, our guys are excited about it. You could feel it up there and then at the training table, and we're going to have a great week of practice this week. The coaches are excited, and so here we go. This is an opportunity that we got to go jump on right now, and I just think back to what this game could be: a Saturday night game, 8 o'clock, first playoff game ever in the Horseshoe. It's going to be electric. It's going to be where the fans feed off the players feed off the fans, and again, a historic game. So a lot to be excited about in this game.
Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, this time last year you had close to 20 guys who ultimately went in the portal during the winter window, and that was a different situation because you were preparing for a playoff game. But what's your expectation as far as the attrition that you'll experience when the window opens?
I think when you look at the numbers, we're still playing, so I think a lot of these guys want to continue to be on the team. They love this team. They want to finish it out the right way, which says a lot about who they are. But when you look at the week in and week out, or year in and year out, the number of guys on each team, it's 15% or so. So when it's all said and done between now and in the spring, you're probably going to get somewhere in that range. Every year I guess it's increasing a little more. So there's a lot of things that go into play. There's playing time. There's NIL opportunities. There's a lot that goes into play. So we just have to adapt with it, and we'll see how that shakes out for us this year.
Wait until after the playoff is done, or what have you sort of talked to them about? Sort of navigating that?
I think each. Yeah. So, what they've put into place, which I think makes a lot of sense, is like you said, after your last game, there's 5 days there. And so, for a lot of our guys, I know that they want to do that, but each guy is going to be on their individual basis, and we'll deal with it as they occur.
All right, this message is for any media out there in Knoxville or possibly Pasadena who are also on this call. I'm going to take one more question right now and then pause, and anyone out there on the Zoom who'd like to ask a question, just turn off your mic, state your name and organization, and we'll go ahead and take that call. But first we'll do Andy Anders, 11 Warriors.
You mentioned Josh Padilla and Montgomery being in the mix of guys you're going to evaluate on the offensive line. What stood out about them that they're now in that competition?
Well, they've been practicing and working towards it, and I think they deserve an opportunity to compete the next 2 weeks to see if they can find themselves in a role, and that's kind of where we are. And I think a big part of that is how we came out of last game.
Both of those are interior guys. I know you talked about Donovan possibly moving inside. Does that mean he's sticking in a tackle?
Probably, yeah. We'll look at a couple different things, but right now, and that's still a possibility too. George could really show something this week, and we can make that move there. But right now, he's going to be a tackle.
All right, I'm going to open up the floor for anyone out there on Zoom. If you have any questions.
Hey, I've got one. Noah Weisskopf from the Lantern. Ryan, Kirk Herbstreit said on the College Football Playoff show today that you guys might have been better off with an away game because fans could boo on a potential early third down or 3 and out. What is your response to that? What's your expectation and message to the fans ahead of this game?
Well, that happens sometimes on a 3 and out anyway, so we're good. We're used to it. No, I mean, we're fired up to be at home. We can't wait to be at home. It's going to be a great atmosphere, and our guys are fired up to go finish the season with a win in Ohio Stadium.
I've got one. Brendan Gulick, Ohio State Buckeyes on SI. Ryan, I realize you have no control over the seating, the bracket, all of that. You just got to play who you're playing. But how do you feel about the top 4 ranked conference champions getting automatic buys? Is that a viable way to conduct this championship moving forward?
I don't know if I need to jump into all that right now. I just got so much on our plate. It's such a giant question. I know that there are reasons why, and I know this is the first time around, but I do think they're going to refine it as time goes on and come up with a better solution for all. I do. Now, maybe they'll just keep it the same way for the next 10 years. I don't think that'll happen. I think there'll be adjustments. I know why they did what they did. They want to honor the conference champs, which I think is the right thing to do. But I know that, as they continue to do this, they'll start to, flush out more and more of the issues, and it'll be, again, a more refined process as we head forward. So that doesn't really answer your question all that much, other than I know that, these guys are going to work hard on that. And I think it's a great conversation for down the road, how the conference championships play into it, the conference championship games play into it. Right now I'm just, I'm going to focus on Tennessee.
And just as a quick follow-up, the fact that the teams that lost their conference championship games seemingly were still rewarded for getting there. Do you like the fact that the conference championship games still seem to matter in the eyes of the committee, regardless of whether you won them or not?
Yeah, I do. We can argue with how we think the rankings were leading into conference championship weekend, but if you play in that game, unless, it's just a really lopsided game, I do agree with the fact that, those teams should not be penalized for playing in a close game.
Anybody else out there?
Kenneth Berry, Touchdown to Kansas Network, Coach Day. Just in regards to how's the morale of the team? Obviously, going into last year, you had a lot of opt-outs. You guys still prep for the bowl game. What's kind of the difference, especially with the senior class? The morale of the team going into the Cotton Bowl last year versus going into the playoff this year, despite the loss.
Well, the first thing is last year we'd have an opportunity to win a national championship playing in the Cotton Bowl. This year we're in the playoffs with an opportunity to play in the national championship. So that's the first thing. I think the morale of the team right now is we're excited. I'm not going to sit here and tell you last week was not fun for anybody, but we have a new target. We know that the national championship's on the table, and all of our focus is moving forward.
Anybody else out there on Zoom?
Yes. Coach Day, obviously going into this matchup with Tennessee, what are you all, as far as the wide receiver core, how have you seen this wide receiver core grow over the course of the season as you guys prepare for this upcoming game and be as vital as they are to this offense?
You're talking about our wide receivers?
Their wide receivers, yes.
Yeah. It starts with Emeka. He's a captain. He's a leader. And, he's been a warrior for us. He's productive, and he's the leader of that room. And then it quickly goes to Carnell, who has, really had a very good season for us. And, we've, huddled this season. And when you look at the number of snaps that we played this season, maybe it hasn't been as many as we've had in the past. That was on purpose for a lot of reasons. And so maybe his numbers aren't as high, but he's a huge part of our offense and will continue to be a huge part of our offense. He's a tremendous player and one of the best wide receivers in the country, in my opinion. And then there's Jeremiah Smith to go along with Brandon Ennis and Bryson Rogers and some of those other guys that are still very good players who are a big part of where we are going into this game and in our future. But as you know, Jeremiah has exceeded expectations in year one. Now we're going to need him to play his best right here. And for a young player to come in with the maturity he's had and handle himself the way he has been just a joy to be around. So for us to make this run, he's going to have to continue to do what he's doing. Now, he doesn't need to do anything more than what he's doing, by the way. Doesn't need to do anything extraordinary. He just needs to continue to do what he's doing and take care of the football and run his routes at a high level and continue to prepare the way he's done. He's all season. So it's a great group. A lot of leadership there, a lot of production, and certainly a huge part of our offense.
All right, I'm going to thank those of you out there on Zoom. We're going to go ahead and continue locally here. Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
Ahead of the Peach Bowl in 2022, obviously you were talking with excitement, but you also feel the stat of 40 points. That's kind of the threshold to win those games. I kind of looked at it. The Georgia game is the only game you've ever lost. When you score at least 40 points, I know those are different clock rules and whatnot.
Right.
How has that math maybe changed for you now living in this world where it's new clock rules?
I think it's a great conversation. I do think with some of the new rules and the way things go now, that's probably not the same as it was then. But we all know you got to score points in these games. And going back, however long you want to go, when you get into the playoffs, you got to score points. Now, as we know, defense wins championships, and you got to control the clock. But scoring points will be very, very important, and we got to do that in this game.
I think played 4 playoff games, if I have that numbers right. Clemson twice, Alabama once, and then Georgia. There's obviously trying to get your team rallied in those different games, but also there's this idea of like aggressive Ryan Day and maybe how you attack some of those games. Do you notice that about yourself, and have you found yourself at times maybe trying to figure out how to tap into that, not just in December, but overall?
Yeah, I think you do have to be that way, and I think it's how you coach, it's how you approach it, it's how the guys play, it's confidence, it's all those things, and so we got to do that in all 3 phases. We have to be that way, and we will. I mean, every year when you get into these games, like you said, you got to go after people, you got to be aggressive, and we have to do that. So. We got to game plan the right way, and a big part of that is the confidence going into the game, making sure that you know what you're doing, that you feel like the game plan is clean and that you can execute it at a high level, and then you go to work. But I know it maybe doesn't feel like that coming off a last game, but once you get away from it and you get focused on the new opponent, it's easy to build confidence going into it, knowing when you look at the body of work of what guys have done this season, and there's a lot to point to, is my point. And when you look at the guys around you, you got good players next to you. So we'll do everything we can to address the issues coming off a last game, so that we can attack and can be aggressive in the game.
Austin Ward, podcast.
Right. I know when Berm asked you about the selection process, there's nothing you can do about it. That's a conversation for another day. So aside from that, just at noon, were you surprised that you guys wound up being the 8?
Well, based off of what was said coming off of last week, of the excerpts that I heard, where the conversation was, the teams that had no more games to play, there really wasn't going to be much movement. That was said, and that there probably wasn't going to be a lot of data points, for the other teams. I just. Not to get into the specific teams, but the question would be like, if Penn State were to lose by multiple scores or whatever, would that drop them down below us because we had beat them? I think all these conversations came into play. So it was I guess a 1-score game, 8 points, and so they decided to make sure that they didn't penalize them for being in a 1-score game in the championship game. Whatever. You know what I mean? At this point, it's like this is what it is. We got a home game. We're playing Tennessee, and that's it. That's what we got. And the one thing about this that I do like is the fact that, you control your own destiny. So, we didn't have an opportunity to play in that game. We lost our last one. So now here's the situation that we have. Now we got to go make the best of it.
Did you think, when you guys were watching it together, that any of the players themselves were surprised or disappointed or maybe motivated by that? What did you think the reaction was when you guys saw that is the path now?
I laid it out for them last week and told them what I thought was going to happen and what could happen. So I don't think there was any surprises.
Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
Yeah, I was going to ask the Penn State question, but you guys obviously wanted to beat Michigan. You wanted to win the Big Ten. That didn't happen. How much pressure does that put on you guys and you specifically to make an extended run in a playoff? And obviously you've got one really tough opponent, Tennessee, and then the number 1 team next.
I don't think right now that that's the case because. Like coming off of that last game, is there pressure to win that game? Yes. And I just think that we moved on from that. You know what I mean? Like it didn't go well. Did people press? I mean, you can say yes or no on that, but we don't want that anymore. Like we want to make sure that we're playing in this game, we're playing free, we're playing, with our focus on winning the game. And and not worried about the consequences. And so that's what we're going to do in this game. And, and that is what it is. But we're fired up to be at home too. I mean, this is, again, I keep saying it, but a historic event for everybody. This has never been done before. And I think our guys going to have that approach.
And I know you don't want to look past Tennessee at all, but we all know what would be next, Rose Bowl against Oregon. How much excitement would there be about that rematch in the Rose Bowl?
Well, like I said, I think when our guys look at the teams that are in the 12 teams, our guys have a reference point on a lot of those teams. So we've played some of these teams before. We know what they look like. We know what it feels like. Now, Tennessee is not one of them. So this is going to be new. And so we got to go to work. And that's where the focus is going to be because, as you know, the hardest one's to get the first one. And we'll go from there. But I think that's a big part of the excitement of our guys when they look at the 12 teams. There's nobody up there that they say, we can't beat those guys. We feel like there's everybody in the draw we can beat. Now, we got to do it one at a time, and we got to make sure that we're winning the first game.
And final questions, Tim May, Letterman Row.
Hey, thank you, Jerry. I should have gotten on Zoom. Just two quickies. Number one, Tennessee offensively. Emily Leava, has kind of been up and down a little bit, but played pretty well and stuff. What have you noticed about them that stands out, and especially when you add in the Josh Heupel factor of how they like to play offense?
Very innovative coach. I think the quarterback has a strong arm. Running back is excellent. I think he was all SEC and runs low to the ground. They spread you out and try to create space issues for you. I think the receivers, some big ones. There's some quick guys in there. I mean, they're talented, and so they try to put as much stress on you, especially with the space and the tempo. So we got to be prepared to play fast in this game, and so we've already kind of started that process here and what we're going to do for this week, and getting lined up and making sure that our guys got their cleats in the dirt and can go play football. Because again, how do they try to stress you out? They try to stress you out horizontally, vertically, and then with their tempo.
Does the fact it's SEC versus Big Ten too add some panache to this matchup? You understand what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, in your mind, how does it add panache?
It's a great matchup against two teams that really don't get to play each other very much. Two great brands in the playoffs, and I think when you look at when you looked ahead a few years ago, like this is the type of game that you're like, okay, this could be a great environment against two very good teams, and so this is what we got.
Thanks, man.
Yep.
Coach, thank you.
All right,
very
guys.
much.
Thanks, Ryan.
Take care.